Everybody. Let's minimize that. Yeah. That way you guys can see everything. So, financial cybersecurity. Your retirement investments aren't as secure as you thought. Disclaimer. Presentations for educational purposes only. I'm not a lawyer, even if I sound like one, so seek legal advice from elsewhere. I am, however, an investment advisor representative. I will use the term IRA interchangeably. An IRA is the person, an RIA is the firm. Again, you're not clients. This is not financial advice. I cannot be held liable for that. Overview, we're going to do a quick little introduction, where I'm going to give you a financial crash course on our history, how we got to where we are, electric vehicle credits, because it's EV themed this time. That will also pretty much include, if you decide to buy an electric vehicle, the things that will be available to you in terms of tax rebates, tax refunds, etc. And that will be both federal and New Jersey. Financial institution security, you can guess it's not all that great. Some of them are good, some of them are not. I'm going to answer the questions if your investments are actually safe. And then we're going to do a little closing argument. So a CC by SA, does anybody know what that is?
Creative Commons, I forget it. Share alike, I forget what PY stands.
Yep. It means Creative Commons, public domain pretty much, by which means provide attribution, and then share alike means that these can be used. So if any of you guys decide you won't like the information in here, or you want to show it to somebody, you want to use it in your own presentations, you can, so long as you provide the attribution and credit. This is my logo. This is my cybersecurity company. So the things that are explicitly not covered would be logos and trademarks like that, taglines like that one, or anything associated with any of these companies, these ones, or any of those ones. None of those are actually in this presentation, but I hate remaking the slides, so I just keep that stuff in there. Red Eye audience participation, since everybody needs to be a little active. This little thing has been sitting down in the bottom left-hand corner the entire time you guys entered the room and since we've started this presentation. Can anybody tell me something that's unique about that eye? The little eye in the left-hand corner. How about now? How about now?
It's red.
So that eye is actually made up of ones and zeros.
Oh.
You guys have things in front of you the entire time, and sometimes you just don't realize them until they've actually been shown to you. This is me. A little information about me. I'm owner of the pen testing company, cybersecurity company that I just showed you. We do privacy enhancement, small business security awareness, et cetera, et cetera. Started my first business in the finance sector in 19, personal training certification. I speak mostly on security topics. I purchased a community restaurant back in 2016. I've since sold that one. The picture that you just saw was some minor acting and production credits, and I've passed Series 65 to be a registered investment advisor. So that means I can provide financial planning, financial advice. I've done a lot of shit. That's why, you know, this presentation, you're actually getting some financial information out. That's the one that I passed. So the difference between an RIA and a stockbroker or a broker dealer. IRAs have fiduciary duty to their clients. Stockbrokers, broker dealers, they're the ones who trade stocks. A fiduciary duty means that I have legal and ethical guidelines when providing advice to a client. That means that I am legally responsible if I do not act in my client's best interest. That is not the same for a stockbroker. A stockbroker can buy and sell stocks, and they're not legally required in any way, shape, or form to make sure that they're making the best decisions for you. That is the difference between an RIA and a stockbroker. Something for everyone. In this presentation, if you have any cybersecurity or financial training relating to investments, go ahead and raise your hand. How about if you guys have any investment and retirement accounts, 401ks, government employees? Put your hands up. How about if you manage any of the accounts yourselves? How about if you have a checking or savings account? If you use dollar, good, because something in here is now for you. Fractional lending and currency creation. So this is what we started talking about for what banks do. Fractional lending was created because not all deposits from a person are needed at once. What that means is the US banks currently have a 1 to 10 ratio. So for every $100 deposited in a bank, the bank can loan out $1,000. Every loan that a bank creates is it actually creating money out of thin air in the form of debt. Every time this loan is created, it increases the amount of money that is in the total global supply. So new currency creation causes a net devaluation in the existing currency. So every dollar in your pocket, whenever a loan is made, decreases the value of your dollar in your own pocket. When the total money is increased, That means, again, that the dollars in your pocket become less valuable. So now we're going to go back in time, and we're going to figure out where our current system really came from. Prior to the Bretton Woods conference, we were on the gold standard. Back in, Nixon was the one who took us off the gold standard. We're going to cover that in a hot second. So this is July 1944. World War II is still going on. There are 730 delegates, 44 allied nations, and they meet in New Hampshire. Out of this conference comes the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, and what would later become part of the World Bank. This also, from this conference, secures America's economic rise and our domination on the global stage. The main purpose, or one of the main purposes of the IMF after World War II is rebuilding, because there was so much destruction that America was pretty much thinking, okay, well, we clearly need to, number one, help Europe rebuild because everything is just destroyed. And it also helps us create new markets in which we can sell our goods. So the IMF wanted to promote the stability of exchange rates and the financial flow of capital. That, in very simple terms, just means the ability for money to move from one place to another. The way that they do this is they create a Forex exchange. A Forex is a decentralized market for trading currencies. The reason that Bitcoin, for example, is classified as a commodity and not as a currency is because if it is classified as a currency, it cannot be taxed. Commodities are things like oil, gas, gold, other things that are tangible assets in which you can actually tax. That's why Bitcoin is not a currency, it is a commodity. This exchange is pegged to gold, sort of. It's actually pegged to something called a gold convertible currency. And that will become extremely important in about 2 seconds. So at this time, a troy ounce of gold, which is not actually an ounce, is equal to 35 US dollars. And this is back in 1944, so it's been an inflation a little higher now. Harry Dexter White, who is the senior US Treasury official at this conference, and the genius behind the term gold convertible currency. At this time, America controls approximately 2/3 of the global gold supply and is the only currency that is still directly convertible to gold. So there is war been raging in Europe. The way that countries pay for their debts is that they take gold and they transfer it from one bank to another. So during this time, not only is America selling arms and other things to all of these countries, so we are being paid in gold, but it is no longer safe for these countries to necessarily hold on to their own gold. So what they do is they pretty much bring the gold over to America. And in America, we say, okay, when you need, we will move your gold from one bank vault to another when you need to make your exchanges. That is still currently what happens in terms of like where the majority of the gold is, and countries need to exchange their foreign exchange their foreign reserves. They'll move it from one vault to another. So how did we get from being a gold-backed standard to our debt-based system? This is called the Trippin dilemma. The global reserve currency comes into question because a country is running deficits to fill supply. So a deficit in and of itself, especially for America, is not necessarily a bad thing. What that means is that the global reserve currency, the US dollar, is used in most foreign financial transactions. So as deficits accumulate, the reserve becomes less desirable and its position becomes threatened as these deficits accumulate. Same exact thing that's happening to America right now. So as America goes further and further into debt, we assume that that is a bad thing, and hence, from other countries' perspective, it becomes less desirable for them to use our currency, right? Makes sense. 1913 is the Federal Reserve Act. So citizens can no longer convert their dollars into gold, because you used to be able to take your dollars and you could go to the bank and say, I want this back in gold. Hence, they were directly convertible to gold. 1971, Nixon ends our dollar convertible standard for foreign governments. The reason that is important is because we happen to be in a war approximately this time, and France realized that we might have been printing additional money, so the amount of money was no longer representative of the amount of gold that we had in hand. France then decided that it wanted to start asking for its deposits back, and so Nixon realized that if we do that, we're going to end up going bankrupt because we had more dollars on hand than we had gold in the vaults. So at this point, he ends the convertibility standard for foreign governments. So now it's free floating. It's no longer a dollar for gold. The dollar becomes a fiat currency, which means it has no intrinsic value, something that is has intrinsic value would be something that is a useful product. So gold, for example, is useful because we can turn it into conductors. It can be used for a lot of different applications. It is fiat for let it be done, which means an arbitrary order or decree. So this actually originates from a sovereign or a king saying, let it be done, and pretty much making a commandment and it being followed. That is what is fiat. And then it means faith-based. So it's only as good as the faith that I place in it. It has no intrinsic value. So the almighty dollar. The USD remains our primary reserve currency. And the reason being is because we maintain a strong economy. In the global landscape, our economy is absolutely enormous. It is the most traded currency. And in 2019, 88% of all global trade is in the US dollar. 88% worldwide. Many other countries maintain reserves of our currency, so they hold dollars. Literally a half of all of our printed currency is held by other nations. Half of it. The reason these other countries use the dollar is because it's in gold, oil, food. Having a reserve currency like the dollar makes it easier for nations to conduct business across borders. So let's say I'm Canadian and I want to do business in the Eurozone. So I can either A, have our currency conversion when I actually do business, or we can just denominate things in dollars. So that makes it easier because you don't have the additional transfer in and out of another currency. If everything is denominated in dollars to begin with and we trade in dollars, it makes it much easier for us to conduct business.
Chinese yuan, so I got countries at the south is Chinese.
So yes, that would be, so China actually would like to replace the US dollar as a reserve currency. However, I'm going to get into why they can't really do that in a hot second. But yes, you are right on the ball for that. So countries who currently use the USD as their currency: Ecuador, El Salvador, Zimbabwe. Quasi-currency, which means that it is accepted for most transactions in all of these. And then in Panama, it's actually legal to tender alongside its actual currency. The other thing about dealing in US dollars is if you are in a situation in Venezuela, for example, in which they have hyperinflation and printed an absolutely ungodly amount of money in order to stabilize or try and prop up their economy, their currency pretty much became absolutely worthless. So what the citizens started doing is they actually started trading in US dollars. That's why it is so important for the country who is a reserve currency to maintain a strong economy. There needs to not be a lot of movement within the pricing itself or in the fluctuation, because that is one of the major things that allows it to be a reserve currency. China 100% would love to replace the US currency as the global reserve, but just taking this past year, there's a war going on in Ukraine, in case anyone was unaware of that. And so Russia, because we have put a lot of sanctions on them, is trying to move out. And one of the things that happens when we put sanctions on a country is we cut off their access to dollars. So what you have prior to us sanctioning you is what you're going to get. That's pretty much it, which means that it has now become much more difficult for that country to operate in the global economy, because 88% of trade is done in the US dollar. That's why economic sanctions from the United States are such a strong, powerful force. So indicating for what China wanted to do, Russia ended up trading China some of their currency. So they ended up actually taking some Chinese yen or yuan. And when Russia said, hey, we would like to trade this back into this currency, China pretty much said no. So you can't really do that if you're a global reserve currency, because that means that you don't have any faith in that. And the other thing is that China naturally deflates its currency in order to make its exports more viable on the global stage. So that's a lot of currency manipulation that ends up happening, which is a big problem if that is the reserve currency, because from other countries' perspectives, you can't really do that because it makes it not viable as an option to use. Now we're going to talk about some inflation. So inflation is the general increase in prices of goods and services, and it's calculated using something called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI for short. This is the CPI, and what that essentially means is that they will take a bunch of items like the price of milk all across the country from various grocery stores, and they will compute the differences between what they've previously been to what they are now, and that will give you a CPI. This does not actually include other things like the prices of energy supply. So gasoline is not in there because it's more volatile, which means that it's much more difficult to actually price that in. So this is more so what you're going to see in your grocery store, for example. Whenever you have inflation, it reduces your purchasing power. So if your dollar is worth $1 and inflation goes up another 10%, your dollar has now become less valuable. Same type of thing for when banks start printing money, the dollar in your pocket becomes less valuable. So the government aims for 2 to 3% inflation annually, which means that more or less, and again, the inflation is not actually a direct corollary to your purchasing power, but it's very, very close to it. And what that means is that inflation is a very, very hard to understand economic concept, like deep down, which is why it's much easier to just explain that inflation pretty much means inflation goes up, your purchasing power goes down. That's the easiest way to explain that. So if the government is aiming for 2 to 3% annually, that means your dollar in your pocket is going down in value every year, 2 to 3%. So the following inflation rates are from the US Labor Bureau of Statistics. 2020, it was 1.4%. 2021, it was 7%. And 2022, it was 8%. What that essentially means is that 3 years ago, your money is worth a sixth less now than it was 3 years ago. Think about that. Every single dollar that you have, every one that is in your bank accounts, is worth a sixth less than it was 3 years ago. So let's bring that back real quick. If the US dollar is the global reserve currency, when the US government increases its money supply and causes inflation, every single person who holds that currency is now experiencing inflation. What that pretty much means is that from our perspective, it is actually very beneficial when our inflation increases, because it's not just America who is suffering the consequences of that, it's every single other country as well, because they're all operating and trading in the US dollar. So inflation does not nearly affect America as much as it does other countries. So in essence, every time we print money, everybody shares the burden, not just us. And they can, foreign countries can partially counteract this by adjusting their exchange rates in relation to the US dollar. So this is one of the methods in which foreign countries try and mark our level of inflation. So I'm gonna give you guys some real hot tips. Okay, the next two slides are going to be the most important ones by far out of probably every single thing that you see today. What I've learned is provide value $2,000 of mistakes at a time. So without fail, almost every single household, and I do mean every single household, is making at least a $2,000 a year financial mistake. And over your lifetime, that is easily $160,000 or more. So interest rates have been depressed near zero since 2007, but they are currently increasing. So savings accounts, money markets, CDs, all of these rates on them are increasing. It didn't really matter where your money was, even just sitting in these base accounts prior, because you weren't really making that much on them. Not to say that it was nothing, but it really isn't as important as it is now. As of 2023, the average savings accounts pay 0.035%, practically nothing. I don't know why the rest of that didn't come up, but it should say a high yield money market is about 4.45% or 4.55. This is actually something that I show for my investment clients. And what this pretty much means is this is the average balance. If you are under 35, that is $11,400. If you are over 35, that is $57,200. That includes savings account, checking accounts, money market. Your APR over here, your first one is 0.35, which is your current savings rate, and that's what you could be getting. So what that means is that 10, 20, 50, and 100-year interest. The difference between those two saving rates over, again, balance one, so this is for under 35 people, for your first and second one, that's what your numbers are, and that's your lifetime difference, almost $1 million. For your 4.55, that's your lifetime difference, $4.8 million. If you are not currently looking at what savings rates you're getting, you need to go to your bank at the end of today and check them, because you are leaving a lot of money on the table. And that's just a very, very simple indicator. So that's your $2,000/$160,000 advice for free. Go check what your rates are. So that's the thing. You can go check your rates, but the banks are more or less going to offer what they're going to offer. So you need to actually look outside of necessarily just your own bank. Banks that have a lot of branches, like physical locations, so PNC, Wells Fargo, TD, et cetera, they're going to traditionally offer lower rates because they actually have physical locations, they have more expenses. But it's absolutely ridiculous when they could be offering you something that's above average industry standard, and they're just not. So you are literally being raked over the coals by your bank if they're not actually giving you anything above 4% right now on your savings accounts. Like, you are being raked over the coals. So let's get into some electric vehicle credits. The Inflation Reduction Act signed into law on the 22nd of August. That's where it is. In case anybody actually wants to find out where this information came from, you can go look it up for yourself. So this is called the CVC, or the Clean Vehicle Credit. Credit is the IRS parlance for a dollar for dollar tax reduction. The CVC of $100 reduces your tax bill down to $900 from $1,000. Very simple. But it will not reduce your tax bill below $0. So if you owe taxes, it's not going to reduce it. It's not a rebate. They're not going to give you money back for it. So the maximums are for a used vehicle, $4,000. The credit equals 30% of the sales price up to $4,000. And it is $7,500 for a new vehicle. So if you are buying EVs, you can potentially get a $4,000 credit for a used one, a $7,500 credit for a new one. This is the federal stuff only. There are additional ones for New Jersey in a hot second. So the way that this is stepped up is it's $2,917 for a battery capacity of at least 5, and then $417 for each capacity over 5. And that is up to the $7,500 limit. This is the used ones. So the used purchase restrictions, which again, I haven't listed everything because that would be very boring and I'd be talking about a lot of tax stuff, which I figured you guys might start on that. The purchase price for the used ones have to be $25,000 or less. It must be made from a dealer, so you cannot do private sales. And the vehicle must be bought for personal use, not for resale. And you must not be the original owner. So what that means is you can't really sell it to yourself again. You cannot also be claimed as a dependent on another person's tax return. So something that somebody brought up yesterday was that, let's say that you were the original owner of it and you have a younger child who is not your dependent. Could you potentially sell it to them and they get the credit for it? The answer to that is yes. You cannot have claimed another one in the last 3 years. And your AGI cannot be $150,000 for married, $112,000 for heads of households, or $75,000 if you're single, and all other cases. Now, these are actually for the new ones. So if you decide you want to purchase a new EV instead. This is both available to individuals and businesses. The used one is only available to individuals. So you could, again, purchase for your own use, not for resale. Vehicle undergoes final assembly in North America. These are new restrictions on the manufacturers themselves. The manufacturers also have additional restrictions coming up. So America is trying to reshore our battery production, make our supply chains more stable. So they're taking a lot of that industries that were being produced overseas in China and these other unstable countries, and we're bringing it back to either A, American soil, or B, friendly territories. Battery capacity has to be at least 7 kilowatts. The manufacturer's MSRP can exceed $80,000 for vans, sports utilities, and pickups, which means if you're buying a $100,000 vehicle, it doesn't apply for this. And $55,000 for other vehicles. Your AGIs for these, $300,000 for married, $225,000 for heads of household, and $150,000 for everybody else. Now, these are actually the federal energy credits that are also in the Inflation Reduction Act. I included these in here because these are probably going to be applicable to some of you guys here, but it's not directly associated with the EVs. Whitehouse.gov, clean energy. This is a extremely simple interface that pretty much allows you to just click on it and it will give you some of the stuff that is available in terms of credits. So up to a 30% credit applies for solar systems that are paired with battery storage or standalone. So if you're just getting battery storage or if you're just getting solar, you can still get up to a 30% credit off of the cost. That's important because previous years it just used to be a solar installation. Now it is actually included for standalone battery applications as well. And then a 30% or up to a 30% credit for energy efficient windows, heat pumps, newer appliances. Up to $1,200 each year for adding installation efficient windows, doors. So if you need to replace the windows or doors in your house with something that's more energy efficient, it can be up to a $1,200 credit a year. What that means is you should space out your purchases over several years so that you can take full advantage of the credits. And a special credit for up to $2,000 for electric heat pumps. And heat pumps pretty much make it very efficient in order to do heating and cooling. All households can get up to $4,000 of some of these credits, while low income can receive double that. And you can also get a $150 home energy audit conducted by an inspector. So if you're not sure what would actually be useful to your house, you can hire somebody, have them do the inspection, tell you what would be most valuable to you, and then you can get a $150 credit off of whatever that cost was. And then low to moderate incomes can also get the rebates for installing this. The reason this is important is because if you know anybody who actually is in a lower medium income bracket who would really benefit from this, it's really designed to make sure that people don't freeze in the winter, they don't get overheated in the summer, and we're in general decreasing our energy usage and our dependence on electricity production. So if you know anybody, tell them to take advantage of these programs. Now we're going to get into the New Jersey ones. 100% sales tax exemption on 0 EV vehicles for purchase or lease. That is electric vehicles. This does not apply to hybrids, which means that sales tax in Jersey, I don't know if you guys know, sucks. So if you're buying an electric vehicle, you don't have to pay sales tax on it in New Jersey, which is very nice. There's another program called Charge Up New Jersey, and that includes up to $4,000 for the purchase or lease of new EVs, including both battery electric and plug-in hybrids. So the sales tax exemption is only on fully electric vehicles. This other one for the purchase is up to both hybrids and battery electric. Vehicle price has to be under $55,000, and it must be from an eligible dealership. Received at point of sale means that this particular credit is received at the point of sale when you purchase the vehicle. That is when they should be giving you this credit. And then a $250 rebate for home chargers. Interesting little side note, you can also drive in the HOV lanes without any, regardless of how many people you have, if you have an electric vehicle, you can ride in the HOV lane. You also get a discount on your easy passes during high traffic times. That's a 10% discount for the New Jersey Turnpike and the Garden State Parkway. The vehicles have to obtain at least 45 miles and meet those particular legal requirements for California standards. And then there's actually a lot of programs for businesses as well. So It Pays to Plug In is one of their programs. I didn't include them in here because they're not going to be applicable to everybody. But if you are a business in New Jersey and you want to develop electric infrastructure, there are a lot of programs being offered from Jersey right now that you can take advantage of. Now we're going to get into some of the security stuff. So secure passwords. What makes a secure passphrase? Anybody want to offer suggestions? Come on, you guys are a smart group here. Don't fool around. That would be a very good guess. That will definitely make it difficult. So entropy, a measure of disorder or randomness in your system. So which of these is easy to remember? That or this? The reason the second is actually significantly more secure is because number one, you're going to remember it. Number two, it is long enough that it actually makes it and adds so many additional characters in there that the entropy is so long, it becomes significantly more difficult to crack it. Because there's pretty much everything in there that is useful in making a password. It's alphanumeric, which means both uppercase, lowercase, numbers, letters, etc. And the second one is a lot easier to remember. So that also makes the second one more secure. I recommend KeePass. KeePass is a local database. Sorry, let me back up real quick. A password manager, which is KeePass, stores all of your passwords in it. What that means is you have one very long secure master password. You use this to open your Vault, and the Vault actually stores the rest of your passwords in it. One of the #1 recommendations time and time, and then a further time again from security professionals is that if you are not using a password manager, you need to be using a password manager. The sole reason for that is because if you are not using a password manager, you are the low-hanging fruit in terms of being compromised from a security perspective. If you are not using a secure password manager, you need to go home today, check your interest rates, and then go look up password managers. The password manager allows you to create one master password. It opens up your vault, and then all of your actual banking passwords, your useful passwords are stored within this vault itself. The other ones, so if you need a mobile operating system key password or mini key pass, are both options for Android and iOS. Yes.
Comment on LastPass?
I was about to say that.
Okay.
So the difference between LastPass and KeePass is that LastPass is an online database, which means that it is being stored in your browser. KeePass is a local one, which means it's only on your device. I personally prefer local ones, but that is just how I operate. There are instances in which you need to be able to share this among multiple people. So for example, if you're operating a business or an enterprise, you might need to share those passwords. That's where online solutions like KeePass actually become much more useful. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and KeePass traditionally has been very, very good in terms of their security. Recently, there was just an issue in which without going real technical on it, they had a piece that should have been more secure than it was. It was a misstep on their part. The way to get around that is really understand what your or your business's security needs are, and then look them up. Some of the things to check for is to have, for a company, to have third-party security audits, so that it's not the company itself just saying, yes, we're very secure. Somebody else from outside the company has also come in and looked at their code and verified that. That is how you're going to find a provider who is very secure for you, especially if you want to use something that's more easily accessible. So LastPass is stored within your browser. It will autofill your information, and hence it makes it much more convenient for everybody. There's always going to be that security versus convenience trade-off anytime you're doing security. So you have to find the things that are useful to you versus the things that are not. We're going to get into some multi-factor, MFA. Does anybody know what the three are?
Initials are?
No, what the actual, what makes something multi-factor?
Oh, you have something you know, something you are, something you have.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Extra points for you. So some examples would be a PIN or bank card, a cell phone SMS / passphrase or password, a fingerprint, password, iris scan, and then token providers. Free OTP, it's what I like. You can use Google Authenticator, you can use Authy. There's a lot of other ones. In my personal opinion, this is actually going to be one of the most secure options. I honestly do not understand why most banks and other institutions do not implement this explicitly, because it's really not that hard to do. And it would greatly increase their security awareness or a security profile. And then you also have hardware devices. So things like YubiKeys. What that essentially, it's in there, I'm not gonna grab it, but a hardware device is a little thing, kind of looks like a USB. You plug it into your computer, and it's a separate way in which to authenticate, which means that if you're trying to authenticate, if you don't have that device, it won't authenticate. So that's a hardware device or a hardware token. Now let's move into some institutional security. Our institutional security for banking and other things is absolutely excellent to laughable, like laughable in the extreme. Most large banks, somewhere in their organization, use ancient decrypted payment systems and a lot of other systems. The way that banks, when they accidentally send each other millions and millions of dollars, because these mistakes actually happen regularly, the way that a bank fixes that is they call somebody up from the other bank and say, oh, by the way, we just accidentally sent you $20 million. Can you send that back to us? I'm not even kidding. Like, that's actually how these things are done. So you think that your bank is this extra secure platform in which to store your money. Some of them are, a lot of them aren't. So perfect example is the NIST, National Standards Technology, et cetera, et cetera. They recommend currently that changing passwords frequently is not secure at all. That never should have actually even been in the standard. The guy who actually even suggested that, when he suggested this, put it in as a placeholder. He said, we should not actually include this. This is a placeholder here. And then it got accepted into the standards and widely distributed. So if anybody, your company, your bank is asking you to change your password frequently, you should tell them that they are not currently following the updated standards and they need to change that immediately. When one of my banks, I went to and they kept asking me to change their password, I immediately wrote an email to their security department and said, you guys aren't currently following the standards, which is a violation. I think you guys should update your policy. The other thing I really don't understand from banks is limiting password length. Some banks will limit your password length to something like 20 characters. There's really no reason to do that in the modern day. Like, it just doesn't make sense. There's so many very simple changes that could be implemented that have just not. And some of it is inertia, some of it is unwillingness, some of it is company culture. It's just very, very silly to do, shall we say.
Not to change the password. Write it down on the desk or something.
So number one, people will either A, put them on sticky notes, put it right on their computer, which obviously makes it very insecure if I'm standing there and I'm like, I wonder what the password to this computer is. And I'm like, oh, look, it's stuck to the monitor. The other thing that becomes an issue is because people will tend to make easily rememberable passwords. So for example, if it has to be 8 characters plus whatever, and then it's changed, oh, well, now I can't use the password I've been using, so let me use the exact same password, and now I change one letter in it, or I change one number. So they're not secure to begin with. The passphrase option is much, much better to actually use and implement. So if they just actually made the requirements that, sure, you have to create a passphrase that you remember, it has to be 20 characters or more, and it has to be alphanumeric, et cetera, those would actually be extremely high standards and would be very difficult to crack from a brute force perspective. So again, offering multi-factor authentication if they even offer it at all. So that is your bank saying, let's send you an SMS, let's offer you token authentication, we can send you hardware. Just not offering it is, again, stupid. It's just stupid. They do, however, a lot of times offer something that is transparent to the user. So they do this by device identification. So for example, if you regularly use your phone to log in, they will take that as an identifier and say, okay, well, we've seen this device multiple times before. They can use your ISP, they can use your location, or they can do browser type / fingerprinting. The problem with this is that if you utilize a VPN, or you have a different device, or you change your browser fingerprint to reduce tracking, it becomes much more difficult to access these banking services. So for example, there is a particular bank that I had initial trouble accessing because I would access it through a particular way, and they didn't like that. Or I would, because I reduced tracking on mine, I present as a Windows machine when in reality I'm using Linux. So they'll say, hey, well, we noticed that this isn't correct. And I'm like, I have literally a 60+ character password and I have a token authentication. Do you really think somebody broke that? Like, there's absolutely no reason for some of these other things to be done when in reality, if they would just implement better security protocols off the base, that it would not be an issue. And unique browser fingerprinting. So in your browser, some of the things that they use to create a fingerprint is your number of add-ons, type of add-ons, how big your screen is, your time zone, your language, what platform you're using, fonts installed on the system, and touch support. So those are all things that actually just make up a browser fingerprint that makes it unique to you as an individual. Some of these things are consistently being collected and monitored by your institutions to see if you are you. Yes. So that's actually,
you're
yes.
supposed to keep it secret, right? Keep it secure.
Yeah.
So now, if your password is stolen, right, from the bank, not from you.
Yeah.
So if you change your password frequently, then is intruders.
So again, anytime a company or a bank or anybody experiences a breach and their password database is stolen, which again, the correct way to actually set something up. So going back to the password manager, if a bank or other institution sets it up correctly, they should be able to steal the actual database itself and still not be able to access the passwords, because there's something called salting functions and other stuff that pretty much adds additional information. So when you submit your password, it shouldn't just be taken as your password. There's other information from a security perspective that is added into that makes it more secure. So if a bank or other institution has correctly done that, even if they steal the database, the attacker should not be able to actually access your passwords. That's it being done appropriately. Now, on the other hand, in addition to that, anytime that they experience a breach, any company, they should 100% make sure that their users change their passwords anytime that happens. Because, yes.
Finish your thought tonight.
Anytime that happens, they 100% should actually send something to their, and actually send it the information so they know you have to change your password and why you have to change it. So that allows you to say, oh, I need to, because again, a lot of people reuse their password across everything. If, for example, your email password is stolen and you use the same one for your bank and everything else, well, guess what? Now they can send an email to your bank, they'll log into your email address, and then they'll change your details because they have access to your email and your bank. And when you have verification that it's being done through your email and they now have access into your email, they can then change where that information is going.
So how often can you count on your password being stored correctly in the salt?
So how often should you count on that? Well, number one, the reason you should have a different password for everything is because you should count on it being stolen at some point. 100%.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, you should 100% count on your stuff being stolen. So that is why it is so important to not reuse your passwords across the spectrum and to make sure that, again, why password managers are so useful, because they will generate unique passwords that you can apply to each different thing. That's why it is so useful. So you only need one very secure password to remember for your master password in your password manager. That is why security experts again and again and again recommend that if you are not using an average individual, a password manager, that is the number one thing that you need to do. So let's talk about some financial institution security. 2FA directory/US, that's the international one. And this is a GitHub project that recompiles these lists daily. These lists, and this is what it looks like. This one is for the United States. You can pick up banking, betting, cryptocurrencies, crowdfunding, finance, every single one of these. This is, again, compiled daily. What this list does is it will bring out and show you, this is the banking one, every single bank in the US, and whether or not they have documentation, whether or not they have two-factor that's enabled for SMS, phone calls, emails, hardware, software tokens. So all of these say, these are the banks, these are the institutions, this is the MFAs that they offer for you, and these are the options that you can request. And then the documentation of how to do so if they provide the documentation for it. Some of the red ones, for example, if they do not currently offer two-factor, you need to request it from them. Because again, I really do not understand why some of these institutions who are very large just do not do it when they very much could and would make them much more secure. It reduces their risks on the back end of fraud and other things. They just haven't implemented them. Here's one for, let's see. Yeah, Lending Club.
Website.
Letters upper and lower case punctuation. Yes. The answer to that is yes, that would be alphanumeric, everything that you want in a good password.
Quick question. Do you have like multiple levels of password, like for things with lots of money in, little money in, and like stupid things like, you know,
Yes,
magazines?
100%. 100%. So for example, like if you have access into the New York Times, for example, you're not going to care if somebody steals your New York Times password. Like, sure, change it if they say we've been breached, but you really don't care about that thing. What you really need is you need secure passwords and very secure passwords for the things that are important to you. It's determining what your threat levels are and what is important to you. It's the same thing a company does when they say, okay, what if we get hacked is actually important to us? The things that are important to Coca-Cola are going to be their recipe and not necessarily, let's say, where their locations are. So it's defining what things are important to you, and that goes into defining your personal risk. So again, banking is obviously important to you. New York Times is not going to be. And again, the limitations in character passwords is something, because it's really funny when you interact with a bank and they limit your password to 20 characters, and yet you can go to the New York Times and you can have a 200-character password.
Sometimes they require you to have a 200
Yeah.
word password. You want to put in your first name because who cares?
Yeah, exactly. By the way, anybody out there, I'm not really looking at the chat screen in particular, so if there's other ones that come up, feel free to actually tell me. This one in particular, I pulled up because if you see when you actually scroll over it, it will tell you what kind of support it offers. So the TOTPs are time-based, which means that when you set them up, it uses your authentication app. The server and your device know what the secret is, and the only thing going forward that they need to agree on is the time and date. And then you can generate the 6-digit or 6-digit passwords, and they change every 30 seconds. Yes.
For that matter, you don't even have to be online to get that information. You know, if you're in a situation where you have a computer that's online without Wi-Fi, you know, plugged in, and your phone has no reception, you can still use it.
Exactly. That's exactly why it's so important. So if you don't have connectivity, you can still access that and use it. Robinhood in particular, I like Robinhood as a brokerage for those of you guys who don't know. So it allows stock trading and other things. So they, for example, offer TOTP support. I pulled them out just so that you can see that they do offer time-based when you log in. So the Securities and Exchange Commission in 2016 had something called an Edgar data breach. The Edgar system is pretty much where businesses, companies offer their financial information. So that's their quarterly reports, anything that they're required to submit to the SEC. Hackers stole thousands of these documents prior to their public release back in 2016. This was after 8 years of the GAO telling them that they had this data, or they had this vulnerability. 8 years they knew about this, that they did absolutely nothing. And these are the people who are supposed to be protecting your company's financials and information and other things. So sometimes even these government accountability, and they have actually gotten significantly better, but they are by no means perfect. And these things go on all the time. So even the institutions that are telling you that it should be protected, you're not.
Not to mention the open breach.
Yeah. So the Office of Personnel Management was a breach by China for the US government. The OPM keeps track of all of our individuals who have secret clearances, top secret, tells pretty much where they live, all of the information on their background, who they're related to, all of these things. So again, it is not a matter of if somebody is going to be breached, it is a matter of when somebody is going to be breached. And when you set up your operations from the beginning with the assumption that you will be breached at some point, it makes it much clearer. Like if you are a company, for example, and you have customer information, the most secure part about that is to make sure that you don't have customer information that you don't need to have access to. If you are asking for a customer social security number or other things and you don't need those, get rid of them, because that's only a liability for both you and your customer. Let's move on to investment advisors. So the following information is from the North American Securities Administrators Association. This is their 2020 report. It's 2020 because it's 2019, but it's the most recent one. So they take care of the state advisors. So if you are an investment advisor and registered with the state, they're the ones who watch over it. So there's 17,533. There's a little more now, because again, this is 2019 information. And then 27,000 are registered investment registrations. So that's 331 average across the states. You look, pretty much you can see where most of them are located. So these are some quick facts. 80% of these shops are 1 to 2 persons. The IRAs, which are the individuals themselves, make up 94% of this. So 94% of these single person or single individuals who are giving financial advice on these small shops are 1 to 2 person shops. 51% are also insurance agents, broker dealers, 38%. The majority of these clients for these 1 to 2 person shops are retail investors. So that's 82% of their business. That's individuals off the street. That's people who are regular retail investors who aren't necessarily in the financial industry, your Main Street people. And some of the services they offer, portfolio management, etc. So back in 2019, the state examiners found that more than a quarter, 26% of these had a cybersecurity deficiency, 26%. The top 5 reasons are no testing of cybersecurity vulnerabilities, lack of procedures, securing or limiting access to devices, no procedures for internet connectivity, weak and infrequently changed passwords, there it is again, and no or inadequate cyber insurance. This is what they actually give to people as a little checklist. You don't really have to read that. It's just pretty much the ease of use, functionality, security. That is always the trade-offs whenever you're doing something security related. This is their checklist for investment advisors. So they do actually offer tools. This list, by the way, I've reviewed it. It's actually pretty thorough. Like it is a solid list, not only for the financial industry, but if you're actually a business in general and want to pull down this list, it's a good list. It's a very easy to read and very accurate thing. And it breaks down the different things. So for example, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. That gives you your different systems. That pretty much says if you have, do you have procedures in place for when you are breached, what information is important. This is the confidential data inventory. So example, what information is actually important to your business? What do you need to protect? Because there's things just like, I don't care about the New York Times password, but I want to make sure my banking password is safe. That's what these things do. So these resources are available from them. I would highly recommend if you or your business isn't using them, go check them out. They're a freely available resource. So if 80% are 1 to 2 person businesses and 19% have 3 to 10 employees, that is 99% have less than 10 employees of these financial advisors. Do you share your accounts or user passwords with your advisor? Because that's actually illegal. And based on the lax standards for businesses, large businesses, do you really think these small outfits have even seen the checklist? So if you're a 1 to 2 person shop, more than likely, the other guy on the team is probably not somebody who's extremely well versed in cybersecurity. They might be doing some compliance work. If you have under or 10 or less people, you might have somebody on for security. My guess is you probably don't though, because that's still a relatively small business. And doing security and doing it correct is expensive, unfortunately. So it doesn't have to be, but it,
big companies like
yeah. So they actually, the nice thing is that the larger companies actually have the money for security teams. So the security team's entire job is just to make sure that they're doing stuff correctly. That's why I'm saying there are a lot of things that could be implemented bank-wide that just are not for some reason. Again, Wells Fargo, for example, and a lot of the larger banks, PNC, all of them, they typically have an investment side that is actually a broker-dealer and an RIA. So you cannot typically operate because there are conflicts of interest there potentially. However, what happens is in a lot of investment banks, they're playing both roles. So they say that they do not have a conflict of interest, when in reality, yes, because they're making money from buying and selling your stocks, and they're also making money from offering you the best sound financial advice. So it's not to say that these things cannot be included in the same thing, but in reality, it's more or less a lie when they're telling you that they're always operating in your best interest. Because if you don't know which side they're operating at any given time, how can you be absolutely certain that they're operating in your interest? So we're going to answer, are your investments safe? No. The answer to that is no. Inflation alone reduces your value yearly. So at a minimum, your money is becoming 2 to 3% less in your pocket every single year.
So but that is on paper, because in reality, like if I have 8 million last year, and I had 1.2 million, whatever it is. So it's when you actually go out and buy stuff.
So no, this is the reason. If you have $1 and today you can go out and purchase milk for $1, right? That's a 1-to-1 exchange. If the government is saying now that this next year, or the inflation is 2% and it's $1.02.
What you say by it, I'm just, for example, price of meat has not changed rapidly.
Yeah.
To commensurate with inflation rate. So your money, you still have your money, although on paper, the government saying this is inflation.
So that's why it's in the background, because you don't see it.
Yes.
So when I still have that same dollar, right? So in reality, the bank hasn't decreased my dollar to 98 cents, but now the fact that milk is $1.02, I can't afford milk at $1.02 with $1. So in reality, my actual dollar that when I go to buy something has been in the background reduced by 2 cents and has been added to the milk. So my actual purchasing power is lessened. So all of that happens in the background. Also, this presentation completely disregards if your investments perform poorly or not. So here's a perfect example. If you have investments and you go out and you're not even beating a 2 to 3% inflation rate, your money has gone down. If your money is sitting there in a bank account like it has been in these past years, and your bank has been paying you absolutely nothing for your money sitting there, you haven't been making anything. Your money has actually been going down. So if you're not even with your investments beating what the inflation rate is, you are losing money. And that's something that's hidden in the background that people don't recognize. So lax or non-existent security implementations from large to small. So what can we do? Do not provide information that you don't need to, period. Doctors, dentists, ask for social security numbers. They don't actually need those at all. They use it because it is an easy identifier, because that is something that has become well known. The problem with that is that now you also have to trust your social security number to your doctor, to your dentist, to whoever else you're providing that to. If they get breached, now that means your social security number is out there somewhere. So any information that you give to a company, assume that that is going to be public at some point, and take proper precautions to make sure that that doesn't happen. Get a passport card. If you have a passport, you can also get a passport card. A passport card does not have certain information on it. This is a perfect example. There's a barcode on the back of a passport card that will not scan when you go to a bar, for example, and they ask for your ID and you hand them your driver's license and they scan that in anywhere. That information more than likely is being stored on whatever device they just scanned that into. I have seen some of the security on the back of them. I know somebody who developed one of those, and when they developed it, they pretty much had no security in mind at all, which means that the information, your driver's license number, where you live, etc., is now being stored in this database that at some point will definitely be breached because there's no security standards in it. So
think about the cybersecurity posture of a bar.
Exactly.
That's the.
Yeah, is your bar worried about protecting your information?
Could you say the passport card, that information won't scan off of there?
It will not scan into a traditional barcode. If you want to, I have one on me. I'll show it to you.
I already have one. I just don't go to a lot of bars. Like the last time I went out with friends, I was very hesitant for that very reason. But knowing that the passport card doesn't divulge that information is important.
Yep. Then check which of your financial institutions actually have multi-factor and enable it. Or switch to somebody who doesn't. So ask them too, because when enough people finally ask them to, they'll finally start doing it, because when they start losing business because of it, and it now becomes a financial imperative, it becomes a lot more important. If they don't, yeah, move somewhere that does. Ask small businesses. If you have a financial advisor or planner or anybody, even other companies, ask them what their security procedures are. Say, what is your procedure in case my information gets stolen? If I'm trusting you with my account numbers or my returns, your accountant, ask your accountant what their procedures are. Ask them if they've even seen the checklist, because I can guarantee if they have 10 people or less, it's probably unlikely. They don't even necessarily know it exists. So if you guys had some value and you want to reciprocate it, become a wealthy client. You can become one of my investment clients. I can pen test your organization, set up enterprise stocks, hire me for staff training, take an enhanced privacy course.
What's your recommendation on VPNs?
VPNs. I would recommend probably going with some of the larger ones. Anybody who has been third-party audited should be pretty good. So that is a third. PIA is typically pretty good. TorGuard's typically pretty good. Proton.
Nord?
Say it again. Nord. I actually haven't looked into Nord. I know that a lot of people use it, so I can't make a recommendation one way or the other on it.
You would use it almost very.
Yeah, I use a VPN anytime I'm accessing the internet, more or less.
Don't ever use a free one.
Yeah, don't ever use a free
Then
VPN.
they're using your information to make money.
Mhm.
You're not giving them money, they're getting it from somewhere.
All right, so thank you guys. Closing points to remember: just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. Use free and open source software. Tell everybody you're using it. And if you want the slides, I'll also provide them to TCF so that they can get them from the website. I will answer any questions out in the hallway. I'm going to clear out so the next speaker can come on in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.